Hello EDU 284 students. This is a chat time to go over the things that you have to submit coming up shortly. The first thing that I want to talk to you about today is a professional family involvement advocacy plan. This is due on March 4th and it details a whole lot of things that you've been doing over the past couple of weeks. One of the things that you'll include in this plan is your results of your family friendly checklist. So let's look at that piece. In this part of the rubric where we're talking about an exceptionally written explanation, work samples and photos, and explanations to why the topics and activities were chosen, or selected, this is where you will hone in on some details about the family-friendly checklist. You are looking at all of the things in your practicum site that relate to the family-friendly checklist that you were to conduct a few weeks ago. So now all of this comes together. You will write an appropriate plan for the families served in that child care center based on your finding of the family-friendly checklist. Explain why the topics and activities were selected. For example, if there's not a welcoming space in the lobby, you might want to take a picture of the lobby and then talk about how you would modify to make a welcome space that would be great for all families. Is the parking lot user friendly? Take a picture of the parking lot, do some descriptors of that. So any type of artifacts, including your family friendly checklist, can be uploaded and used for that. Now, let's get to the second part of the rubric. The family plan. This is where you will include your position statement on families, and remember you did those a few weeks ago. Modify those based on the recommendations that I made. Remember to include things on cultural diversity in your position statement on families and parent involvement. You'll also include into this piece a creative family-friendly newsletter, a parent involvement implementation plan stating how you would implement parent involvement and why, supporting evidence, again, and that could be your family-friendly checklist. The more that you have here, of course, the higher the grade. Then your authentic evidence of self-assessment, 7 or more samples. Again, these involve your artifacts and information about the family involvement plan. You will then do an overall reflection on what you learned in the family-friendly checklist process and in your position statement on families and what you learned overall about that piece. And as always, grammar and spelling must be accurate. Part 2. This is a professional part that involves you. What I'm looking for here is an exceptional written evidence provided for identifying and involving yourself in the early childhood field. In this part, you're going to include the North Carolina Early Certification, professional development information. If you have not been leveled already, you can go to the website on the Early Childhood Professional Development Institute and look at where you would be leveled and make comments based on that. Also, your education plan, where you are now in your education and where you hope to go, your resume, which you submitted and I made suggestions to modify, and your personal philosophy. Also include some information about the NAEYC Code of Ethics. How does the parts of the NAEYC Code of Ethics relate to you as a professional? Again, we're looking for authentic evidence. That can be pictures of the credential, certificate that you may have, pictures of transcripts, if you have a training roster of training you have attended recently, those type things. On this piece, at the end, you're going to reflect on what it means to you to be an early childhood practitioner. And then, as always, we're checking for your artifacts to be free from grammatical and spelling errors. So these are the things that I'm looking for the professional family involvement plan, family advocacy assignment rubric that will be due on March 4th. I'll return in just a minute and talk with you about the next item to be loaded in TaskStream on March 8th. The second assignment that I wanted to speak to you about will be due on March 8th. This also goes into TaskStream. This is a NAEYC Standard B case study documentation. In your module, you will find a developmental checklist. You will use that checklist to observe one child in your practicum environment on any age group that's in that checklist. The checklist has developmental domains for children ages 0 through 5 years of age. So now, What we're looking for here in your case study documentation, you will do an anecdotal, event sampling, time sampling, and running record based on your observations of the child. As we look on the high end on the exceptional, your documentation would be exceptionally written, clear supporting of evidence of why the documentation used was demonstrated. In other words, why did you write this anecdotal record on this child? Why did you write the event sampling on the child, the time sampling, and the running record? Also, construct your own definition of each type of these records. Evaluation. Exceptionally written summary, pertinent information with supporting evidence correlated with examples were included. What I'm looking for here is a summary of your developmental checklist findings. In other words, if you assessed a 3-month-old in the area of fine motor, then you're going to talk about what you found based on that. So your artifacts here would be copies of the developmental checklist and any pictures or artifacts that you may have pertaining to the child. Which brings us to our next part of the rubric, which is the authentic evidence of work examples. Again, your artifacts, that means your checklist, pictures of things that the child is doing in the classroom. You might even want to include with that some pictures of materials that could possibly be used with the child. So that would be up to you. Your reflection is another piece that you would use here. Your reflection would be included on all items. In other words, what did you learn about documentation as a result of this project? What did you learn about development in children as a result of this assignment as well? And the last thing we're looking for here is an artifact and all of course your whole report that's free from grammatical and spelling errors. So that capsizes what we're supposed to do on those assignments. If you have any questions, please feel free to email or call me.